Tonight we are going to talk about something that I don't think anyone really spoke about ever on video. And I'm not saying this to toot my own horn, but I think I'm going to make the first attempt at this, the first stab in probably Jewish history up until this point, to talk about the history, the contemporary and even ancient, but primarily the contemporary history of the wines of Israel. And to help me, I have this wonderful handy dandy book. I'll flip over the video when I edit this. Out of a wonderful book. Actually, this is not the newest edition of the book, but it'll do for my purposes tonight. This is a book written by a gentleman by the name of Adam Montefiore. I don't know if he is related to the Montefiore. He could be. And this is a person who writes about Israeli wine. Yeah, so he decided to go ahead and compile a book. This particular edition is actually from the year 2012. So, as you guys would imagine, a lot has changed in the Israeli wine industry from about the past 8 years. And he basically covers, here, like every single, I would say, everything ranging from boutique size to what do you call industrial size winery, which is funny because industrial size wineries in Israel are basically considered what I would call if you go to France or Spain, they're considered semi-boutique. Most people don't know that the Israeli wine industry is actually not what they call a new world industry or a new world country, meaning, you have the old world, which is Spain, France, Italy. I believe that's it, Spain, France, and Italy, and there's another one, but Portugal. And then you have the new world, which is, people say the new world is basically Australia, Argentina, South Africa, Cyprus, Greece, Lebanon makes wine, and they also pull in, recently they've been pulling in Israel. And I would argue, I would contend that Israel is not new world and it's not old world, it is ancient world, my friends, and I'll prove it to you. I'll get right into it. So, if we're looking at basically the history of Israel, of the wine industry in Israel, you're talking about the Torah, you're talking about the Tanakh, you're talking about ancient history, you're talking about contemporary history, Jewish history. My friends, we have the greatest story ever told. I don't mean to offend anybody else, any of these other wine producing countries, but we pretty much have the greatest story ever told. You come to any place in this country, any place that makes wine, you're talking about Beit El, Har Bracha, the Golan, the Galil, all of these places, every single winery, every single place where there you will find a winery, you will find a story attached to that wine from Torah, from the Tanakh, from Tehillim, from prophets, from Jewish history, and all these things. We're the only country that has this. We're the only nation that has this going for us when it comes to wine. So I want to just read for you guys a little bit here. There's a whole chronology, and actually in this book it goes up to 2011, but I'll kind of like expound. I'll go past 2011 with you guys. Very interesting stuff. So let's kick it off. 8,000 BCE, the oldest grape pips to be found in the Levant. The Levant, for those of you guys who don't know, Levant is basically the area that is today Israel, Lebanon, and I believe you can also include Jordan, and you can also include parts of Syria in this, and also the truck that's making crazy noise, as I'm talking. 5,000 BCE. The vine, the first vines arrived in Canaan. So now you're talking about this land. Before it was officially Israel, it was a place called Canaan. As we know, the story of Abraham was commanded to go to Canaan. We know the story, and I'll mention this. So now the story of Noah, it talks about in 3000 BCE, Noah planted the first recorded vineyard. So now you guys read the story of Noah, where Noah, after the flood, he's, basically it's him and his sons. And he is just, I guess you can call it stressed out, so he plants a vineyard, I guess you could call Noach the first alcoholic, and I'll tell you something, guys. I don't recommend, or I'm not in favor of alcoholism. We encourage everybody to drink responsibly with a bracha, with a blessing. That's really the whole point of what we're doing here in the Jewish nation, in Israel. You know, we're not here, just to let you guys know, we're not here, unlike, you know, all the other wine-producing countries, we're not here to do what's called connoisseurism and Epicureanism. Yeah, we like to enjoy the wine. We enjoy it. We you know, we have a good time. But, you know, really, we're here to elevate. We're here to make a bracha. You know, if you're talking about Shabbat, Purim, you know, Brit Milah, circumcisions, pretty much all of our Havdalah, all of Jewish life is basically centered around wine, and it's centered around making a bracha on the wine and then after bracha, to the point where wine is the only liquid where we actually don't say shakol. It has a separate blessing in and of itself. It's Borei Pri Hagafa. So, 1400 BCE, the spies returned to Moshe Rabbeinu with a large cluster of grapes to illustrate the promised land flowing with milk and honey. So you guys know the story again. The 12 spies, excuse me, came to check out the land and to spy out the land. And 2 of them came back with a large cluster and with a good report, and it was a cluster of grapes. So actually, if you guys look on the cork, so actually not this cork, but if you guys ever look at a bottle of Carmel wine, you'll see on the side of the cork. So here we have the actual oil lamp from the temple. This is for Golan, but on Carmel, you guys will see a design of these spies with the carrying the clusters of grapes, which is interesting. You know, you're talking about people who founded, you know, the modern Carmel winery in the late 1800s. I don't know if they were religious people, but they decided to put this on the cork. Okay, 1000 BC. King David had different officials look after his vineyards and wine cellar. So now you're talking about basically from 1500 BCE, before the Common Era, until 500. The golden age of wine in ancient Israel. My friends, we were basically making wine here for about 1,000 years, if not more, and we were paying tribute to the, I guess, the Greek and the Roman empires with wine. It was used as, I guess, a diplomatic vehicle, which is interesting because that's actually the goal of myself and my partner. So now we get into modern history. Okay, so here he writes, Montefiore writes, there were 2 main revolutions in the development of Israeli wine. The founding of the modern Israel wine industry in the 1880s by Baron Edmond de Rothschild using French experts, and the quality revolution of in 1980s with imported expertise from California. So basically you had this kind of thing where people came here, I guess the first Aliyah, when people first settled this land. Don't let anybody fool you that we came here in 1948. We came here about 70 years prior to that. And we were building up the land. Yeah, and we basically planted vineyards, and the oldest wineries in Israel. You're talking about places like Zikron Yaakov. You're talking about places like, I think it's Rosh Pinah. All these places, Rishon LeZion, Petah Tikva. You're talking about the 1800s. You know, the Shore family. So I'm going to get into this. See, actually, this is in 1848. There's actually a wine called 1848. There's a winery. So 1848, the Shore Winery was founded in the old city of Jerusalem, 20 minutes behind where I'm sitting, by the Shore family, which is now known as Arza, Tzion, and Hakomim. Yeah, there's actually 3 different wineries you guys could get called Arza, Zion. It's actually spelled Zion in English, and Hakomim. These are all made by the Shore family. 1855, Sir Moses Montefiore purchased the first land to encourage agriculture. My friends, this is a person, a wealthy Jew from Europe, came. And 1855, he bought, he didn't steal, he didn't take over, he didn't use any army, he didn't invade, he just bought some land. 1870, Mikveh Israel Agricultural School, which is actually still opened in, okay. Efrat Winery, which is now Tepperberg, founded in Jerusalem. So my friends, Tepperberg is one of the biggest, it's one of the industrial size, I would say, wineries in Israel. It's interesting because they actually take grapes. A lot of people, you know, it's a very popular winery in the kosher world, even the non-kosher world. A lot of people don't know this. They take their grapes from the Shomron, from Samaria. 1882, Baron Edmund de Rothschild, owner of Chateau Lafite, founded Carmel. So Carmel Winery, the one I spoke to you guys about with the clusters of grapes, 1882. 1887, cuttings of Bordeaux varieties sent from Chateau Lafite. So Bordeaux varieties, my friends, are basically, you're talking about, so if you go to France, I'll give you like a quick lesson here. If you guys go to France, you rarely get straight up, let's say Cabernet Sauvignon, straight up Merlot, straight up Cabernet Franc. You will get Bordeaux blends, right? If you go to Bordeaux, the region of Bordeaux, what are Bordeaux blends? They are contained in Bordeaux is, you're talking about Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, and Merlot. Sometimes could be Syrah, maybe, if I'm not mistaken. I definitely know it's Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, and Merlot. So these three varietals were sent to Israel to be planted and developed. 1890 to 1892, Rishon LeZion and Zikron Yaakov cellars built by Bordeaux winemaker. 1896, Carmel Wine Company formed to market wines in Europe and America. Israel's first brand and first exporter. My friends, we've been exporting wine. This country has been exporting wine for over 100 years. You're talking about 120, almost 125 years. 1902, Carmel Oriental founded to market wines within the Ottoman Empire. So now you're talking about pretty much everything under the auspices of the Turks. Talking about Israel. It's interesting because it would only be Israel, but it's funny, like, I think the Ottomans banned, and just give you guys some history, the Ottomans ripped everything out of the ground. The only wines they allowed for production were wines that were designated for religious purposes. Okay, now we go to 1907. David Ben Gurion, Israel's first prime minister, worked at Carmel, so he must have been a young guy. He must have been like, I don't know, you're talking in his 30s, maybe 20s. 1950, Ashkelon Wines, Carmet Zion, now Siegel, founded. Siegel Winery, my friends, is also one of the bigger, you guys probably will find, you go to any Shabbos table, whether it's in America or in Israel, you'll find somebody always brings a bottle of Siegel. It's funny because in Israel it's considered kind of a kiddush wine, but in America it's like you have the Siegel, they have their higher end Siegel, so a lot of people are really into the Siegel. But here in Israel it's like, I don't know, maybe some people are, but a lot of people bring their Siegel to their friends for a kiddush. It's kind of like a cheap wine. The entry level. Okay, 1952, Eliaz Winery founded, which is actually now Binyamina, which is in Zikron Yaakov. So my friends, if you ever had, you have the wine, the main label called Binyamina. You also have something called Yogev, which in my opinion, my friends, if you guys hit up a kosher store, if you guys order wine for Shabbat, Yogev, in my opinion, you're talking about an average $15 bottle. It's probably the best bang for your buck Israeli wine, in my humble opinion. Okay, 1957, James Rothschild donated Rishon and Zikron cellars to SCV. The Israel Wine Institute was founded, 1957. So, 2020, the Israel Wine Agency was founded. There we go, 1972. So now here's where we're getting serious. In the 70s, Professor Cornelius O.U.G.H. from UC Davis, USA, recommended the Golan for quality winemaking. So he recommended the region of Golan. He went up to the Golan and he recommended the Golan Heights as a region for quality winemaking, probably because of the elevation, the soil. You have a lot of these minerals. You have basalt. There's another one called soria. Very interesting, I guess, geological formations in that area that allow for incredible winemaking. 1976, first grapes were planted in the Golan Heights. 1980, launch of Carmel Special Reserve. 1976, the first international style wine. 1983, Golan Heights Winery established with Californian Peter Stern, the winemaking consultant. My friends, with that said, let's make a l'chaim. We're gonna go, we're gonna start from it's not even bottom to top, it's just kind of like from really good to really, really good. We're going to make a l'chaim. So this is basically a Yarden Golan Heights 2018 Chardonnay. And we have a nice, this is actually I'm using a plastic glass, but it's got the Golan Heights logo on it. So, we're going to do it up. Alright, my friends, so we just had Tubav. I just want to give everybody a bracha to have love in your life, whether it's romantic love or love from your, just family, even from your pets, you know, whatever. All right, my friends, l'chaim, l'chaim. This is actually, it's funny, we have a regular Chardonnay here. Well, it's not so regular, but then we also have an organic from a very specific single vineyard, in which we're going to try after this. So this has been actually sitting, this has been open since yesterday. The good thing about whites is you can keep them open for a few days, you can refrigerate them. I mean, you can also refrigerate reds, but they kind of lose, you know, if you open a red, it's preferable to drink it. I recommend drinking it in one sitting. 1987, Yarden Cabernet Sauvignon, 1984, won the main trophies at the International Wine and Spirits Competition in London. My friends, Israel has been winning medals in wine competitions since 1987. You're talking about 33 years. So for 33 years, we've been making world-class wines, and the world is only just beginning to take notice. So much so that we've been on the top 100 list of Wine Spectator for the past maybe, I would say 5 years, maybe if not 10 years. I think 2012, Golan Heights Winery won Best New World Winery of the Year. They were given that mantle by Wine Spectator. Again, in my opinion, I guess you could say it's New World Winery, but in my opinion it's Ancient World, so you could say it's the best Ancient World Winery of the year. 1989, Margalit Winery, founded by Dr. Yuri Margalit. Margalit, I think Margalit Winery, it's a very highly touted winery, and it's actually not kosher. So a lot of people don't realize this. I would say at least 30%, 25-30% of the wineries of the quality known wineries in Israel are actually not kosher. Therefore, that means that they actually, most of them, I would say, with the exception of maybe there's a winery called Amphora, who are near Caesarea in a place called Kerem Maharal. They have imported their wine or exported their wine to the States. But I think apart from them, most non-kosher wineries do not export to the States, because the primary market in the States is Jews and primarily people who drink kosher. So if you don't have any other really significant market, there's no reason for you to export if you're a non-kosher winery in Israel. So it's kind of kept in this kind of I guess you can call it what I call echo chamber of wine enthusiasts, who kind of like go to each other's events and they drink really high end, and they're really good non-kosher Israeli wines. So 1990. Barkan Winery was founded in place of the bankrupt Stock West. So Barkan Winery, my friends, I think it's probably the biggest in terms of bottles produced and in terms of size out of all the wineries that exist in Israel. 1992, the launch of Domaine du Castel. My friends, Domaine du Castel was founded by our friend Eli Ben Zaken. He was a restaurateur. He's, I think, from France. You can correct me, Eli, if I'm not mistaken. He was a restaurateur for a very long time in Israel, in the 70s and 80s. And in the early 90s, he launched his winery. And it's, in many people's opinion, one of the best wineries in Israel. His kind of penultimate wine is the Grand Vin. Not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly. It's spelled Grand Vin, if you're just reading it like an American, you know, like the guy from Glorious Bastards, or Arrivederci, so it's Grand Vin. So his wine, every year, never fails, my friends. Really, he's winning medal after medal after medal, and he should be well, ad mei esrim, and keep making those wines. 1993, Yarden Wines awarded, Yarden is Golan Heights, awarded Vin Expo trophy for the third time. Vin Expo, my friends, is the competition in Bordeaux, France. 1995, Serena Sutcliffe, master, I guess, sommelier, discovered Castel Grand Vin, which I just spoke about, my friends. So basically, there was a famous sommelier by the name of Serena Sutcliffe, and she basically stumbled upon this Castel Grand Vin and basically put this wine on the map. So now, 1999, Yarden invited to the New York Wine Experience. My friends, with that said, this is the second time Yarden is mentioned, or in a significant way, so let's make another l'chaim on a different wine, you know. This one is an organic Chardonnay. those of you guys may be asking, what constitutes organic? This is certified organic, certified green. There's only, I think, maybe 3 certified wineries in Israel, certified organic, not certifiable. There's another one, I forget the name, and there's a third one which I am actually, my partner Yoshua and I are working with. We won't reveal the name just yet, but they will be producing wines very soon, and they're also working on the indigenous grapes of Israel, so we're going to have organic and indigenous at the same time. Very exciting stuff. Alright, 2000s, new wineries built by Carmel and Ramat Dalton, Telerad Yatir Winery, Barkan and Hulda, Golan Heights at Yuron, which is, my friends, what we're going to have after this. This is actually in the Galil, but it's owned by Golan Heights Winery. It's called Galil Mountain Winery, and they make a few nice wines. And this one is called the Alon. It's actually a blend of. See, the beautiful thing about Israel, my friends, is that if you go to Europe, if you go anywhere in Europe, they actually have rules. What things can be blended? What are the percentages? What are the minimums? You know, if you go to Italy, like you're talking about something like you can't call Montepulciano unless it's from Montepulciano di Abruzzo. You can't call something a Toscana or a Chianti unless it's from Chianti or Toscana. You can't call something Bordeaux or Rhone unless it's from Bordeaux or Rhone. And it has to be specific blends, my friends. With us, we get to do whatever we want in Israel. We don't have any rules. We have appellations, but we don't have any laws on the books from, you know, ancient times telling us what wines we can blend. So here we have this wine called Alon from 2016, Galil Mountain. 30% Syrah, 29% Merlot, 26% Cabernet, it's 15% Cabernet Franc, or Cabernet Sauvignon, and 50% Cabernet Franc. 4 different grapes, my friends. We have other wineries. My friend Amichai from Shiloh, you know, he's got wines. He's got 5 grapes in them, 6 grapes in them, whatever you want. And it's funny, I once did, you know, I was doing a sales run in New York, and I was tasting with one of these managers, and we had a wine, 3 different grapes, and the, I guess you call it a minority grape in the wine was a Syrah, was a Shiraz. It was like 13%. The guy takes a swig and he's like, he's like, what's in this? I'm like, I want you to guess. He goes, definitely a Syrah. I'm like, dude, that's 13% of the grape. He's like, well, I can taste it. You know, some people, they developed a palate. Some people are just that good. They can tell you what grapes are in the blend. Okay, Tepperberg at Tzora, so that Tzora is another winery. Binyamin and Carmel, Zikron Yaakov, completely refurbished. So basically, in the beginning of the 2000s, the Israeli wine industry realized they have something on their hands, and they realized they took a couple of shekels, and they basically just revamped the whole thing to make it, to upgrade it. 2007, Tasting of Israeli Wines by Robert Parker's Wine Advocate, Yatir Forest, 2003, awarded 93 points. My friends, to get awarded 93 points by Robert Parker's Wine Advocate, it's one of the more, Robert Parker is one of the more what I call machmir, kind of strict score givers in the world, probably if not the strictest. For the wine, for a wine to get 93 points is quite something, my friends. For an Israeli wine, that's a revolution. For those of you guys wondering, Yatir is actually a winery that's actually located in a place called Yatir Forest, which is in the south. It's actually towards Beersheba. If you drive past south of Jerusalem, past Hebron, it's about an hour and a half south of here, maybe 2 hours, and it's also a fantastic place because you're getting the blend of the soil, which is kind of like what I call half desert and half, just regular soil, and it's a very interesting combination, and you get a very interesting taste out of it. Interesting profile. 2007, Yarden Cabernet Sauvignon. 2004, one of the Wine Spectator's top 100. So here's when we started, my friends. Golan Heights Winery, you're talking 13 years ago, getting into the top 100 wines in the world. My friends, even if they're number 100, you understand how many wineries are out there on this planet, and this winery is one of the top 100 in the entire world. I mean, that's saying something. All right, 2008, Castell received 4 stars from Hugh Johnson's Pocket Wine Book. 2010, Carmel Kayumi Shiraz, 2006, won the International Trophy at the Cantor World Wine Awards. Late harvest of Rishon LeZion cellars after 120 years. So, my friends, speaking of decanter, I had a winemaker, my friend Eli Shiran of Shiran Winery. He told me that he had a guy come to his house from Decanter Magazine, a wine writer, and they're in England, they're in the UK, and he basically sat they did a blind tasting, and my friend Eli Shiran, his wines are only, he doesn't mess around with any Cabernets or Merlots or the regular run-of-the-mill grapes. He only has, you're talking about Grenache, Mourvèdre, or how some people pronounce it, Mourvèdre, however you want to call it, whatever you want to call it. Petit Syrah, Petit Verdot. He doesn't mess around with any of what you would call the regular run-of-the-mill grapes. And so he conducted a blind tasting with this gentleman from Decanter, and the guy said to him, "Eli, I love your wine, but I have no idea what the heck I'm drinking." And he told me this story to tell me that just goes to show that we don't have any rules in Israel, and we get to blend whatever grapes we want, to the point where Europeans who come to taste, they have no idea what they're tasting because they've never tasted these combinations before. And so what we're doing here in Israel, we're basically pioneering, this kind of winemaking. You guys can call it, kind of, fly by the seat of your pants or cowboy style winemaking, but really what we're doing is we're bringing back the ancient world, and we're bringing back like the freedom and expression and the beauty of making wine, and we're not restricted by our rules, because we have a lot of rules, Jewish people. We have the halachas, we have the Torah that we live by, we have this, we have that, but at the end of the day, Hashem wants us to use our seichel in terms of what we have on this land, to experiment and to bring the best out of this land. If you guys look around at around the land of Israel, you look at all the wineries, different wines. We have, I think, 7 microclimates. We have probably 4 or 5 different terroirs. We're talking about different types of soil in a small area of the world, to the point where we could, and you're talking about grapes that grow in the sun. And you might be asking, why does Israel produce so many wines that are like, they're very fruit forward? Because it's because of the sun, it's because of the soil, it's because of the climate. To the point where we have certain wineries that actually, they purposefully control the amount of sugar, control the amount of alcohol. If you go to a place like a winery called Netofa, all their wines are, you're not topping 12.5, maybe 13% alcohol. They're very light. They're controlling everything. They're actually the winemaker, Pierre Medovnik. He says my wines are Rhone style, even though they're not Rhone, but they're Rhone style. So it's interesting, here in Israel, you can make wine in any style you want. You can make wine in the style of, style of Rhone, or a style of Chianti, or style of Montepulciano, or a style of Bordeaux, but you're not actually in Bordeaux or Rhone. But it's interesting, you'll have it in that style, but you also have even with that style, you'll have the Israeli twist. You'll have the Israeli version of that style, which is... So, last but not least, Golan Heights Winery won the Best Winery Trophy at Vin Italy's 2011. Daniel Rogoff, Israel's legendary wine critic, passes away. So, we had a very famous kosher wine writer, a person who wrote the first book on kosher wine. His name was Daniel Rogoff, of blessed memory. He passed away actually 9 years ago. And he was the first person, I think he started in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, to write about kosher wines. And he was actually the person that put Israeli wines on the international map. He basically was the person who, put the world on notice. And he said, listen, Israel has a wine. It's not just Manischewitz and Kedem. Yes, it happens to be kosher, but we also have non-kosher, and Israel is a force to be reckoned with in the wine world. My friends, I can tell you, from the time that this particular edition of this book was released, I've been in the wine industry since 2015. My partner has been in the wine industry, I think, since, I would say, 2000, and, he can correct me, maybe 2011, 2010, maybe even before that. I'll tell you guys, the Israeli wine industry has made a lot of strides since then. A lot of new boutique wineries are popping up. You guys can go to, every year there's a there's a show in Tel Aviv called Sommelier. You'll see a new winery every single year. Certain wineries, a lot of wineries pop up, they close down, and new wineries pop up. My friends, I'll tell you, there's 300 wineries in Israel. Ranging from, you're talking about industrial size, you're talking about 10 million bottles a year, 15, 20 million bottles a year, and all the way down to maybe, there's some people that are making like 3,000 bottles in their garage, right? 2,000 bottles, 1,500 bottles. My partner and I, we put on a show. Actually, this year we're not going to because of COVID, unfortunately, in New York, called the Long Island Kosher Wine Expo. And there we bring together, I think, as many kosher wines as we can from around the world, not just Israel, Spain, France, and Italy, but I think we have, probably the biggest variety of Israeli wines under one roof. There's another show called the KFWE, Kosher Food and Wine Expo, put on by our friends at the, I guess you can call them the Royal Wine Corporation, or Kedem. They bring the Israeli wines that they are importing, which is actually a good amount of them. There's actually a campaign going on right now with the Israeli government and a PR firm in the States, or there was, I'm not sure where they are right now, given that COVID is happening. They were pushing Israeli wines very, very hard. I don't know if they made any headway. There were some, I heard there were some events going on, stuff like that. But it's happening, my friends, it's happening. A few wineries signed up. I think Yarden was one of them. My friends at, I think it was friends at Gval Winery signed up. Oh, and Tour Winery, Erez and Vered signed up as well. B'ezrat Hashem, listen, my friends, we're making some headway. We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there, and we're gonna create a category of our own. We are going to be in the ancient world. We're not the new world. We're definitely not the old world. We are in the ancient world, and it's interesting because there's a few other countries that I would say that have been making wine since those times. You're talking about, if you're talking about, I don't know, well, ancient Rome, which is Italy, is a different, I guess you can call them peoples, but, if you want to call it like that, Italy's been making wine since those times, Greece has been making wine since those times. This whole area, really, the Mediterranean, or the Eastern, what I call Mediterranean, which is what kind of this campaign is billing itself as, the campaign of the Israeli government. They're they want to be part of, let's say, Cyprus and Greece, but I would argue that we should make ourselves less Mediterranean and more ancient, part of the ancient world, and also focus on our Jewish identity. And I don't mean necessarily Orthodox or kosher. What I mean is Jewish. We just had Tu B'Av. What my partner and I try to do, we try to connect the wines of Israel to every single, anytime a holiday rolls around, right? Even Tisha B'Av, believe it or not, guys. You're not allowed to drink wine on Tisha B'Av, but, my friends, we made a campaign for Shiloh Winery for Tisha B'Av, right? Rebuilding, and there was destruction, but we know that if the first two temples were destroyed, that we're gonna have a third temple, that whole thing, that if the prophecies of the vineyards coming back came true, my friends, this is basically, living prophecy, what I'm holding in my hands. If you guys don't believe in prophecy, I'm sorry to tell you guys, our prophets predicted that the vineyards would be rebuilt, the Jewish people will come back, make wine again in this land, rebuild, plant the vineyards, make wine, and and the whole world would be enjoying it. So my friends, we're living in prophecy. And so every single holiday that comes up, we're talking about Rosh Hashanah, there's a story connected to wine for Rosh Hashanah. There's for Hanukkah, there's stories with the light and the temple, and you're talking about the oil. We're going to do a very nice campaign for these guys, B'ezrat Hashem, for Hanukkah. You're talking about Pesach, Passover. You're talking about Shavuot. You're talking about Tu B'Av. You're talking about even like certain parshas, certain Torah portions. My friends, there is so much material to go by to connect to our Jewish heritage and wine. And again, you don't have to be necessarily talking about kosher or this or that and the other. Just own your own heritage and your own background and what makes us special, what makes us, what sets us apart from just being, with our, connoisseurs in our chateaus. Because my friends, I hate to tell you guys this, no offense to anybody, from Italy, France, and Spain, nobody cares about these chateaus. But my friends, we have the greatest story ever told. And the wine is directly intertwined with that story. And it's an incredible one. And it's probably, in my opinion, I like to use this page usually as a vehicle for what we call Hasbara. My friends, honestly, all the stuff I've been doing on this page is bupkis. This is the best, what I'm holding in my hand is the best Israel advocacy vehicle ever. I'm actually dead serious about this. I'm not trying to be cute, I'm not trying to be fun. My friends, I'm telling you right now, this is the best for any of you guys watching. If you work at any of these organizations, you're talking about Stand With Us, you're talking about all these different organizations, Hasbara, Israel Advocacy, this is the best vehicle you could possibly have, because this is proof that we are the people that are indigenous to this land, because we came back, we fulfilled prophecy. The prophecies are continuing to be fulfilled. Just the fact that we have indigenous grapes, you know, Hamdali, Jandani, Beituni, Marawi, that we are making, Rekanati Winery is making, and a few other wineries. People are developing, our friend Shivi Drury is developing indigenous grapes, you know, DNA that he extracted from like nothing, from shards that were found by Bedouins, and he's developing indigenous grapes. You're talking about 600 different types of hybrids or whatever it is, and we're gonna have our own grapes soon. You know, we're gonna be making our own Israeli indigenous grapes in the land of Israel, and my friends, we're back, and you know, we're not gonna be uprooted again. Our vineyards, our vines are not gonna be ripped out ever again, and we're here, my friends. We're here, and we're here to stay. You know, if you're talking about, whether you're talking about Judea and Samaria, or the Golan, or the Judean hills, or, I don't know, Zikron Yaakov, or the desert, we're making wine. In the you know, the Negev, Ramat Negev, you're talking about the Yatir forest. My friends, we are making wine all over this land, and we're fulfilling prophecy, and that's all there is to it, my friends. I'll tell you guys, if there's one message I'll give to you guys, just own it. Just own your history, your heritage. Don't be afraid to say Jewish. You don't have to say kosher or Orthodox or this or that and the other, but don't be afraid to say Jewish. Don't run away from yourself. Don't, you know, pretend to be someone you're not, Mediterranean, this, that, and the other, whatever it is. Don't be afraid of who you are, because who you are is really a world-class wine country, and that has world-class wines, and they go back all the way to ancient times, and we are an ancient world wine producing country. Alright guys, Chaim Chaim, Shabbat Shalom.